Hello friends, hello neighbors, welcome to the Music Review Board of Portland Spotlight Series. I'm Jon Hitchcock here, Studio 3, beautiful downtown Portland. Today we got Sonichurst. Let's go, guys! Okay, guys, I want to thank you very much for taking your time. You're all in different places. Thanks again for coming in. This is going to be a lot of fun. Chris Dirksen, I want to hear from you. How did this band start, and who's the founding member?
I think it wasn't really supposed to be a band. Originally, Andy and I were in a band together called The Burdens, and that band ended in 2010. And we individually had started writing and recording songs, both with other projects, but also our own solo stuff. And we started bouncing music ideas off each other and said, hey, we should get together and start playing again. And so the intent was just to jam once a week and just goof around without a band, without the intent of writing songs for a certain genre or a certain kind of set for a certain kind of band. And we thought, this is fun. Let's just let it see where it goes and write songs. And we got several songs into it and said, we should record these. This would be a cool, kind of experimental thing that we've never really done before, because we've always been in pretty genre specific bands. And so having nothing constraining us with that, we went down that road. And we got about the initial idea was I was going to do some lead vocals, Andy was going to do some, we were going to share lead guitar, he was going to do bass, and I was going to do drums. And we got about 2 or 3 songs into drums, and it became readily apparent that my drumming was not going to cut it. So at that point, we started reaching out to people, and Devin was a friend of a friend of a friend, and emailed them some music and said, if you're interested, this is as much as we have going. Either you could just come in and just be a session guy and do some drumming, or you could be involved in the writing process. And he said, I'm in. And he came in, and once Devin showed up, it completely transformed everything we'd written, and we had to, in many ways, rewrite a lot of stuff. And then we recorded it and wrote at the same time. And by the time we got done, Andy, I think, had kind of come to the same conclusion of, okay, I laid the bass down and I did an okay job for the recording, but this is good enough that maybe it should be a real band and we should get a bass player. And Andy had known Aaron, so Aaron jumped in, and to be honest, I've often wondered, should we go back and re-record the bass with Aaron on that first album, because his bass playing is different, and not to put Andy down, but very good. So Aaron's been a good transformation since then.
Are you guys originally from the Portland area, or are you any transplants in the band?
That would be me. I'm from Arizona, kind of born and raised all throughout high school, college years, and then I went to Boston for 4 years, and then I've been living in Oregon since 2014.
Yeah, and so talk about your musical influences, guys. One at a time. Start with Chris.
I started listening, I would say, classic rock when I was young. I was, like many kids, you're influenced by what your parents listened to. The first piece of music I ever owned that was my own choice, it was a 45 of Joan Jett and the Blackhearts' I Love Rock and Roll. And that kind of kickstarted the whole idea of, there's other stuff than just, Gary Puckett in the Union Gap and Barbra Streisand that my mom listened to. And so kind of started trying to find other stuff. And I remember being in 4th grade and getting a Columbia House catalog in the mail and signing up for the, 10 tapes for a penny. And then you have to buy so many albums. And I would just look at the album covers and start ordering what looked interesting. And so I was the weird kid who, in addition to whatever was on the radio, I was listening to strange things that I would find in record stores or on the Columbia House thing. So, and that all kind of moved into a lot of punk rock, and I listened to a lot of kind of counterculture music at a pretty young age. And once I went to my first concert was the Ramones, and Social Distortion opened up for them. And I went home and I said, I don't want to play alto saxophone anymore. I want to play guitar because I want to be in a band. Yeah. And so things kind of jumped off from there. And that's when I started playing more aggressive music, but also getting into like really writing music too.
Ramones, huge in the punk scene. I love them. Andy, same question.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an influence of my parents. I remember my mom was really into Van Hagar, which I was kind of on the fence about once I heard Van Halen proper. And then a lot of AC/DC when I was a kid, through my brother and my cousin, a lot of Journey. So I think I got an eye for the dramatic, like pretty young, as far as like what big over-the-top music can sound like. And then it, moved into some punk, and rock, like through my teens. And that was just my brother. Most older brothers are just like, I just siphoned whatever I could from him. I would look at all of his concert stubs. I would steal all of his records. And then, later in my high school days, I really kind of got into doo-wop and weird 50s stuff, which I think was kind of from my mom as well. And then, throughout my 20s, it just kind of getting into like soul, R&B, just kind of understanding a lot of the history of music. And when people started to evolve it just into new things, that got really exciting to kind of research and stuff like that. So, I know that Sonichurst is kind of a departure from that at some points, but I still feel like that we bring a lot of that same kind of emotion to it.
Nice. Devin, same question.
First CD I ever bought was NSYNC for like before Strings Attached. But then I'd probably say, like, as time went on, definitely my mom was like super into pop and my dad was into classic rock. So I had like CDs like Foo Fighters, stuff like that, and just kind of whatever was on the radio. Once I hit middle school and high school, I jumped on that whole screamo emo train and kind of stuck with that for a while. Still listen to it, a not so guilty pleasure. And then kind of jumped in when I joined the band with these guys. I was listening to like a lot of metalcore, a lot of harder stuff. But I always loved like Rise Against, and most of the shows I went to were probably from punk to metalcore pretty consistently.
Aaron, you're up.
My mother was a guitar player and had tons of records and some beautiful like acoustic guitars. She passed away when I was 6 years old, left me all of her music basically. And so by the time I was kind of old enough to want to start plucking around on the guitar, I picked up her guitar and I just kind of checked out her record collection. It was a lot of classic, like kind of 60s, The Doors, The Beatles, Jimi Hendrix. That's the sort of thing that really got me like psyched about music. And then, I can thank my cousins for getting me into, I feel like 1994 is a year that kind of sticks out as like the first year I remember being like, wow, there's like these CDs full of like amazing songs. I remember like listening front to back to like Dookie by Green Day and like that Sublime album with the back tattoo on it, just kind of being enthralled with it. So I think that's kind of the humble beginnings. And then from there, I just, just being a punk teenager, got into, everybody was into like Blink 182 when I was in junior high school. So that sort of stemmed from that. And then just seeing who those bands were influenced by got me into more of the old school sort of punk rock stuff. And then, from there, it's kind of history, just getting into all the like old British punk, like GBH and, the Addicts and Anti-Nowhere League and stuff like that, all the way to the American hardcore stuff. Got really into that, Bad Brains and Minor Threat, Black Flag, all sorts of stuff like that. So I've kind of I've stayed in that realm in terms of the music that I've played, but then listening wise, I mean, I'm still a sucker for classic rock and for the Beatles and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. So guys, how would you describe your music now? Chris, how would you describe what you're doing now?
That's a tough one. I would say that until we really formed the core band that is the band now. We didn't necessarily have a sound. I think we've cemented that now that we have the actual group and we've been writing together. But I think that we all have some overlap in what we like and what we listen to and what we've been influenced, but we also have some very different departures. I mean, Andy, you talked about like doo-wop, and I never got into emo like Devin did or metalcore. But we all have stuff that we listen to that the other guys don't, but we have stuff that overlaps. And so, if you listen for it because you know what we like, you can go, oh, I can see where they got that. I don't know that you can necessarily pick that out if you didn't know that ahead of time. There's some songs that we have on the album. We sent one to you called Listen Up, Listen Good. And when that one was written, it was more of an Americana, low gain, relatively slow song without the intention of being what it actually turned into. But by the time we recorded it, the gain got turned up and it got a little bit faster, but it's still, the heart of it is really an Americana, classic rock style song. It's just played a little bit heavier. And I think that when you go song to song for us, we are just, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think we got tired of listening to an album where every song sounded the same and where a band where every album sounded the same. So when we have a song that sounds like another song or lots of other songs that we already have, we kind of aren't interested. So oftentimes we're trying to find different stuff to do. And I think that, it's kind of a cliche, arrogant thing to say, oh, we're special and we do something nobody else does. I'm definitely not saying that. And the music we play is certainly cohesive and has a sound and stuff. But I think the writing process comes from each song is inspired by something, and then we want to write a song that either reminds us of that thing or that feeling or whatever. We often hear Andy or Aaron will show up and have a little riff, and it sounds like a Motorhead song, and then we'll incorporate that into the song, and then by the time the song's done, it doesn't sound like a Motorhead song, but it has that riff in it, and we all know that came from that riff, but nobody else would. And so I think that it's a pretty organic way that we generate music from all the different influences we have, rather than just a really straightforward punk band or something.
Right. Well, pre-pandemic, how was the live shows for you guys in the Portland area?
They were great. We had 2 shows before everything got shut down, pretty close to each other. Within a few months, and both the responses were fantastic. Everything felt really organic between the 4 of us. I think you get those first couple shows to kind of knock the dust off, and I wish we would have had a couple more to kind of keep it off. But it was really telling of how much time we all spent together practicing and really trying to read each other and feel each other and try to predict what the other person was going to do. And I think personally, I think it really showed with the performances we've had so far. It was really, really exciting for me personally.
Well, what are you guys trying to capture at your live shows?
We wouldn't be able to do it if people didn't have an interest in live music. So I kind of root it first and foremost in a performance. You need to do it with intent. You need to know why you're there. Now that could be something like really fast and sloppy and exciting, like a Sex Pistols type thing, or it could be something incredibly articulate and tight and technical. But either way, like, know why you're doing it and get ready to show up and do it.
Right.
And that's what I try to bring. That's what I want to ultimately come out through the music we write. Right. But I think most importantly, if we just show up like really focused and really there to try to knock people's socks off, as simplistic as I can put it. I want them leaving feeling like it wasn't just a run-of-the-mill performance.
If I could piggyback off of Aaron or Andy too, something that I think we've all 4 of us have kind of felt is, regardless of whether the band ever becomes internationally famous or we play a live show every few months, our objective has always been to be very professional. I think we're all, those kinds of responsible adults. And so it's important for us, to come across that way on stage. We've all been in bands, and we've even all probably been guilty of it in playing shows and bands that we've been in, where you show up and the guitar isn't working because you didn't have your stuff put together right, or you didn't put the cable in right, or whatever. And that kind of stuff happens. But I think it's always been important to us to feel like when we get on that stage, we're ready to go, and we put on the performance, we put on the show that we wanted to put on, and we reproduce the music in a way that we wanted to reproduce it, instead of not being able to pull off whatever we've been able to do together in a rehearsal or even on a record. And that's something that I really appreciate about all three of the other guys, is that all of them, or all of us, if that's important for us, is to be good at what we're doing, to not overreach, and to, regardless of the size of the venue or the size of the crowd or where we're playing, is to pull it off and be as good as we can.
Where are you going with the live shows now that the COVID-19 is happening?
It's like the $75,000 question, right? I mean, I just got back from a friend of mine who owns a guitar shop in Portland called Strum, and I'm kind of talking to him. He's bringing people in, 10, 20 people at a time. It's encouraging to see Portland bounce back pretty quickly for the live music situation that we're in, with so many people depending on it in our area. But we've never been busier. Sonichurst, us as a band, like we've actually doubled down during the pandemic. We've really started doing digital writing with how easy it is to record on your computer nowadays. We're all just generating new ideas and keep getting it going. So we're chomping at the bit. As the second venues say they start to open up, we're going to try to get in there.
Good. So talk about the album a little bit. Still Standing, guys.
It was an interesting experience. I think, usually when you record an album, for the most part, I mean, I guess notwithstanding, large acts that can rent out Abbey Road for 2 years and record an album, normally you've got your material all together, and then when you're ready to go and you've got it dialed, you go into the studio and you knock out all your tracks and get it done. But in our case, A, because we had the studio ourselves, so we weren't paying for studio time, but B, just because of the way things went, we're like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. The writing of the album happened and occurred while we were recording it. So pre-production and production was simultaneously. So, Devin would come in and we'd write drums for a song, and then the song would change a little bit from what it originally was, because then it'd be like, oh, now that we hear it as a real song, we need to change the bridge to this spot, or the chorus should do this. And then Andy and I would track a couple of scratch guitars, and then the next week Devin would come in and track it. And we were recording for about 2 to 3 hours a week, like after work. And so it took years to get it done. Like, I think it was a year and a half, maybe, to finish the whole thing, because we'd learn drums one week and then track drums for a song the next week. And then the next week we'd learn drums and write the song. And then the week after that, track them. And then we did the same thing for bass. Guitars went pretty quick, but we didn't even have any lyrics written for the song or for the album at all. Several of the songs had melodies kind of figured out. So we all sat together and wrote the lyrics and figured out the melodies together, and then tracked those that way too. So in some ways the process was exhausting, because sometimes you just want to get your finished product done because you have this vision in your head of what you want it to be. But it enabled us to kind of put our feelers out and figure out where we wanted to go with things. And if we wanted to redo something, it wasn't a big deal to redo it. So Still Standing was definitely a cool experience for us to all figure out, like, what kind of songwriters we are, what kind of dynamic we are, things like that.
Did you produce, Chris?
Well, Andy and I produced each other. So usually whoever was tracking wasn't doing any producing. They were just being told what to do. Right. And then we'd trade spots.
Any plans for upcoming albums, projects?
Yeah, it's really weird, because you get kind of the COVID thing, which you have to figure out how to interact with people and kind of get your name out there and let people know what you're working on. So I think we've been writing like crazy. So I think what we're going to do is just get really polished recordings, just kind of start going through and start drip feeding out like little EPs, 2-track EPs that, may all add up to an LP someday. But for right now, I think we just want to keep people kind of abreast to what we're working on and how we're developing through all of it. Because like, if you can't express yourself verbally or like eloquently, sometimes you just have to do it through music. So.
Right. So Devin, have you arrived?
Dude, it's been cool. I think just kind of piggybacking on the last two questions. I know like it's been fun writing, but the coolest part about these guys as a whole is we kind of all have a part in everything, which is kind of cool because like when I came on, they had most of the songs penciled out like a general idea, and then I only have like 3 speeds, so we had to figure out how to fit the songs around those because I like to just, I don't know, beat the crap out of the drums. I don't know why people want to play drums any other way. But so it's just been cool to really just write together. I mean, vocals, guitar parts, everybody's like, I holler out ideas and they're like, hold on, let's work that out, which is awesome. Of just how everybody doesn't have one lane. We're all very vocal on what should happen, and it's definitely a cool part about playing with these guys.
Okay, guys, let's bring in Still Standing. It's the first song you guys recorded on the album. Let's hear it right now. Let's go. Hello friends, hello neighbors, this is Jon Hitchcock from the Music Review Board of Portland, here at the Bridge of the Gods just outside Portland, Oregon, inviting you to check out the new Spotlight series on Facebook. Look for us at the Music Review Board of Portland. If you're a songwriter and you'd like to participate in the Spotlight series, just message us through Facebook Messenger. Have a good day. Wow guys, good job, good stuff, Still Standing, good song. So Aaron, talk to me a little bit, man. Tell us about this writing process. What's your contribution?
Well, I'm glad to finally have a contribution because when I joined the band, the album was fully recorded. So I just basically sat down, learned all of the bass parts that Andy had already recorded. But now we're really like, we've gotten those songs down and we're kind of digging in and starting to write. And I didn't know this about myself before joining this band, but I have some strong opinions. So I think the guys have gotten used to my way of telling them how to play something or asking them how to play something because I was a guitar player for a long time before I played bass. But I really do think that now I just feel like the new songs are part of me. So I'm really excited to share those, since I was kind of around for the creation of them. And I think it did change the sound of the band, hopefully for better. So I'm excited for people to actually hear the new stuff. I'm so much more used to like higher energy stuff. So I think the new songs just have a little bit more intensity, whether or not that's what we were going for originally.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Andy, tell me about your guitar work on this album.
Playing guitar in the Burdens was really great. Chris, just, you know, being Chris's band, I kind of just jumped in, kind of similar to Aaron with this band. I just jumped in, learned the songs, and just kind of was a gun for hire, but having a lot of fun. And obviously Chris and I got along. So with Sonichurst, I knew it was, like, as cheesy as it sounds, like it's your chance to really kind of show people, if you say you're a guitar player, do it. Yeah. So it was really challenging myself to write riffs that I thought were really cool and that I love to listen to. Luckily, the other guys in the band liked them as well. So I was like, oh, that's good enough. And let's just wrap it up there. I feel like between Still Standing and Listen Up, Listen Good, the two songs that we played, we wrote Still Standing first and we wrote Listen Up, Listen Good last. And I really feel like, you know, not to be biased against your children or anything, but I feel like Listen Up, Listen Good is probably, you know, one of the songs that I feel like captures the tension of the band, the emotion of the band, some of the themes and feeling that we have, and try to emote through some of the intensity and some of the tenderness at the same time. We really just like, we try to strike a really fine balance at all aspects of emotion, because, you know, everyone feels everything all the time. So we just wanted to be the people that could kind of make a song that captures it. And, you know, I try to do the same thing through guitar playing as well. I know I try to find my place. It's a band of four, definitely not a band of one. So just because a band likes lead guitar, it doesn't mean you have to be heard all the time. I definitely try to write things that service the song. And a lot of my guitar players that I really admire have been that, you know, been in that lane as well.
Chris, you play rhythm guitar basically, or do you do some leads too?
On the album, I think I play lead on 2 songs, but largely it's rhythm guitar, and I definitely am full-time rhythm guitar post Still Standing album. Andy ended up opting to not do as much lead vocals as we originally were going to do, so instead of us trading off lead guitar and lead vocals, all of us can sing, all of us can play most of the instruments too. I would argue that Aaron and Devin are probably the better musicians out of the 4 of us, but yeah, like at this point, I'm focusing solely on rhythm guitar and letting Andy noodle and be the lead guy for sure, and which is good. I can do some leads, but I'm definitely not the guy that can pull it off like he can. I'd like to piggyback a little bit off of Aaron's comments about writing too. After becoming comfortable with each other, and Devin spoke about it as well, like we know each other really well. I think that, you know, for lack of a better term, we've created a pretty good circle of trust. So Aaron and I are both very opinionated people. I would argue that all 4 of us are, and we will let each other know, you know, that. But because we trust each other musically and just as people, and know each other pretty well, we tend to not get married or whatever to whatever ideas we had. So oftentimes we'll have a song that we're fleshing out, and maybe it's somebody else's idea that started it, but Aaron or I or Devin or somebody will say, hey, what if we do this instead of, you know, sticking your guns, no, the song has to be this. Everybody's always open to, yeah, let's try that different thing. We just had that the other night where we thought we had a song done, and Aaron said, you know, I don't really like how we do this. It's kind of it's kind of slows the song down. But then he also like, what if we do this? And it was like, boom, that fixed the song and made it way better. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I would argue a lot of times I'll say, what if we do this instead? And then once we hear it out loud, I was like, yeah, that doesn't actually work. It sounded better in my head than it did in real life. But all of us all of us are involved in that writing process. All of us, like Devin said, even help produce each other. Hey, Devin, you should do this on the drums. Devin will say, hey, Andy or Chris, do this on the guitar. And so, you know, vocal melody wise, I might come up with a melody and they'll be like, hey, what if you went down instead of up? Or what if you did this instead of that? And I think that us being very committed to what we're doing and making it sound as good as possible, but B, also trusting each other and our judgment on how music is and that other ideas can be better than the one we had. I think we tend to flesh out to make the best song that can happen rather than being married to something that isn't going to be as good. And that's always served us very well in writing cool and interesting things that we want to play instead of stuff that we're kind of, oh, this is boring, but I guess we'll do it because it's a song.
Good. Aaron, end the show for us.
Hey, thank you so much for having us and giving us the time to kind of talk about what we've been spending all this time doing. Yeah, the album start to finish is super catchy. I mean, there's some bangers on there. I think Still Standing is a good kind of starting point for people trying to kind of see what we're about. That is, just like Devin said, the song that kind of got me hooked. And I'm just excited as to where we'll go from here. It seems like every new song we write is sort of better than the last. So I'm really pumped to maybe hopefully come up with a couple of new songs for a digital release, since that seems to be the best way to kind of get music out these days. So look forward to that.
Well, once again, guys, thank you very much for doing this. And I can't wait to come out and see you guys as soon as they open up the world. You know, I can't wait to come out and see you guys. I've talked to a couple people. Chris knows them, who's seen you guys live and said it's a real high energy and a lot of fun. So thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Adios.
See you guys. Hey, what a great bunch of guys. Sonichurst is the name of the band. Still Standing is the name of the album. You can get it on SoundCloud, Facebook, and Bandcamp. Thank you, friends. Thank you, neighbors, for joining the Music Review Board of Portland Spotlight Series. I'm Jon Hitchcock. We'll see you next time. Studio 3, beautiful downtown Portland, Oregon. Thank you. Good night.